episode number six. I almost said 16. Oh my gosh, I'm going far ahead. I mean, to say 13. Oh my gosh. So it is Healing of the Heart podcast with, this is Keisha Henry, and I am your host. And this is episode number 13. Can you feel that sigh? Really excited. Every time I sit in front of my microphone, I get so excited. And just moments before I come on, I usually get like a little nervous because I'm like, am I really going to do this podcast? Am I going to do this? Am I really doing this? I get nervous sometimes, but it's good nerves, any kind of task that we're taking on, a good dose of, what I wish I said, equitable amount of dosage of, a little bit of angst or nervousness is always helpful. It reminds me that what I'm doing is important, but not too much now, not too much, because then I won't be able to do anything, right? But welcome to Healing of the Heart podcast, episode number 13, talking about gratitude. And I think it was really, I wouldn't say only think, but I feel in my heart that it was so important to do an episode on gratitude, especially after having done episode on grief that, I was not planning on doing. But again, if you listen to that episode, which had quite a few listeners on and also persons downloading that podcast, it was just something that came out of the way because I lost one of my childhood friends, Chantel Nelson. And so I just feel like it was such a heavy, heavy topic. And I just, in the midst of grief, one of the important things to do while you're working through grief is to practice gratitude. And I felt in my heart, really felt it was impressed upon my heart to really do this episode on gratitude. So I think it's appropriate to do it. And I'm going to play Chandler Moore. I'm going to lean on you, just to kind of give persons a chance to, log on this evening. So let's do that. Let's play that one more time. And I usually do that for like another 2 or 3 minutes, just the duration of the song, to give other persons a chance to log on this evening. So here we go. Let's play Chandler Moore one more time. So yeah, let's come back. It's about 7 after. It's about 6 or 7 after. I usually just kind of just roll with it. So welcome to episode number 13, gratitude. How are you guys doing? I always say guys. It's not guys, girls, and guys. How are you doing? It's Saturday. It's a beautiful Saturday evening. I don't know for you guys. My daughter had a soccer game this morning at 9 o'clock. First game of the spring season. And she lost. Her team lost 5-1. Terrible. But this morning was so nice. I actually worked today too. I worked in the office today for a couple of hours. It was great. It really was. Always an opportunity. At least I view that it is because I get to do this. So this morning was beautiful. Just reflecting on the day. My location right now, I'm in Loxahatchee, and I'm doing this podcast. I'm looking at my window with this big tree. I don't know the name of this tree, but it's so beautiful. I think I'm going to take a picture and post it this evening after I'm finished or while I'm talking. But this morning was really a beautiful morning. If you're in South Florida, you know that particularly Palm Beach County, this morning was beautiful. I mean, it was nice. It didn't start getting hot until like around like 11, 12 o'clock. And I really felt a lot of gratitude for just the weather itself. It was beautiful it was just nice and cool. It was breezy. If you pay attention this morning to any of what nature offered this morning, it was really a reminder that, there is still something to be grateful for. So I am your host, Keisha Henry. I am a licensed clinical social worker, psychotherapist, and author of Healing of the Heart. This podcast was born out of that book. And if you listen to any of the episodes, I always spend a few minutes talking about, how and why this podcast came to be. But not too much of that tonight, but just a little bit to say here that this is how this podcast got started. It came out of the book. It came out of my own pain and my own suffering, which actually brought me into social work, into practicing, and into working with women and girls. And from all of that came the book Healing of the Heart, which you can find at healingoftheheart.co. And by the way, quick update here that the book is finally almost on Amazon. It's been a to do. honestly, one of my, what should I say, setbacks. But it's coming. It's coming. It's coming. Ingram Publishing has worked with me to get this over to Instagram. Excuse me, Instagram to oh my God, to Amazon. Can I get my words right tonight? So yeah, that's who I am, and so I'm an author as of December, and it's so funny. A lot of persons are saying, "I know you're on to the second book. You guys know too much." Yeah, I am. Don't know the title of that yet, but I don't know. I really love doing the work that I do, and this podcast is no different. So, what is this podcast about? Well, I told you it's this podcast about my own pain and my own suffering that brought me into the work that I do, and that continues to just evolve, as the days go by. Just, being able to walk in my purpose and, what was born in my heart, what was placed in my heart to do. And I continue to do that. And this podcast really is one of those things. And I'm so happy that you get to be a part of it. Like I said, mentioned earlier, when I get to go to the office, I don't really consider that work. The moment I think it's work, that's when something is wrong, honestly. That's when I'm no longer, working from my heart, but working from my head and other scope that is not appropriate or beneficial. But I love what I do. It's and from what I'm hearing, most persons, feel the same way, that they can feel that in the work that we do together, not just by myself, but the team at New Beginning Healing Institute. So yeah. So this is where this podcast comes from. So what is this podcast about? You probably get the general sense. It's about pain, suffering, and working through that to become our better selves and to find meaning in our pain, our suffering. So we can not only, have a better life for ourselves, but of course it's not only about us, but about others. And those others are many others, your family, your friends, strangers, I might dare say, because I meet a lot of strangers every day in this practice community. I meet people every single day, and I love it. And so this podcast is about all of that. It's about, commitment to yourself, to grow, to be curious, to leave judgment at the door, as I say to everyone who walks through my door. Let's talk about judgment and curiosity. And we get to, you know, build that out to see what that really means. And once persons get an understanding of that, well, we start checking that stuff at the door, judgment. And we begin to, look at curiosity about many different facets in our circumstances and our predicaments. And so the podcast is an extension of that. We just get to continue to be curious, right? So we can learn from our pain, our suffering, so we can become better, so we can actually have purpose in life. Like without purpose, there is nothing. Really, there isn't. You think about that. And so that's what this podcast is. And I always say here too, one of my code of ethics that I've signed on to when I became a social worker is to do the least amount of harm. And so this podcast sometimes can be difficult emotionally, right? And so if you, anything we talk about that, I always learned in graduate school, you cannot save any and everyone from being triggered. You can do your best, but you can't always, predict that. So one of the things I like to always do is to, make sure we provide an environment that is one that is about safety. And so this continues here too. And so if we talk about something that's a little bit triggering for you, I always ask you, please take care of yourself first, practice self-compassion, pause the podcast. If you download it, pause, step away, do whatever you need to do that's healthy, that will take care of your emotional needs and your space, right? So that's who I am, and that's what this podcast is. And I usually just kind of pause right here, just take a little break, and we're going to finish playing Chandler Moore, and then we'll go right into gratitude. All right, so we finished up Chandler Moore, so let's continue. Oh my goodness. So let's get for real. So how was your week this week? Oh my gosh. Like just about everyone that I've spoken to this week, whether I'm working or outside of work, everyone is saying, man, this week was heavy. This week was hard. And it was for me too, it was just a heavy week personally, not even professionally, personally, on the home front. It was just a tough week. It just felt heavy. It felt like everything, like any task or any just things trying to get something done or whatever it is. It was just hard. This week was just talk about obstacles. It was just, and coming from the week prior, having gone to my childhood friend's funeral. Oh my gosh, that was tough. That was tough. And, so that was last Saturday. Chantel was buried, and it was just raw for me the entire weekend. It just was. I was tired. You know, uh, Fatigue will make you feel physically tired. I was tired. I was already tired going into that physically, and then that happened, and then the week ahead was like I don't know, like a whirlwind. It was really tough. I don't know how you guys feel about that. Send me a message. Let me know if you had a crazy week. And interestingly, this week, just that's just passing now, is spring break for some college students. Even at Palm Beach State, where I actually teach, my students are on break, and I'm thinking, yeah, I'm gonna get a nice break this week, and it was kind of rough, guys. So gratitude. So if you notice on my post on Instagram, TikTok, and also Facebook, I think I finally got those correct, that I was talking about gratitude every day. I had to be intentional this week. And you know what? Gratitude typically normally does not come hard for me. But let me just declare right now, I am a human mother. I'm a human wife. I'm a human therapist. I'm a human Christian. I am a human everything. Okay. So, and I always say this when I'm practicing too, like I'm in my humanity. Because it's true, not because I'm the expert at what I do. I'm not the expert on anyone's lives. I'm just not. I'm not expert on your life, period. Expert in a textbook. I can quote different theories, this, that, and the third, but it doesn't mean anything. I'm still human. I'm in my humanity. And, I feel a range of emotions like anyone else. And so this week was tough. I had some, things on the home front that just knocked me off my feet. And I don't know, it was just tough. So gratitude this week was really intentional for me. And so you probably saw that on my post. Now, somebody in the community, I wrote, I think one day I wrote, so gratitude. Today I'm thankful for, and I said, fill in the blank for yourself. And for me, and I stated what I was, grateful for. And one of the days I wrote, I'm thankful that my grandmother taught me how to pray. That is for real. Like when I was 3 years old, I used to always see my grandmother from 3 years old onward, right? I saw my grandmother get up at like 5 o'clock in the morning, and in Jamaica, she would light the lamp, like strike the match, take the lampshade off, turn the wick up, right? Light the lamp, blow the match out, and put the lampshade back on. And I see her under the covers. I used to, because I'm not up, of course, but I'm peeping through my blanket, and I would, watch her read her Psalms, and she would pray, right? And I used to hear her call out a bunch of names. I'm like, is this prayer going to end? Oh my gosh. Because I would like to go back to sleep. I remember thinking, I'm laughing now because then it wasn't funny. It was actually annoying. But little did I know that, years later that I would need to do those same things. And I get up at 5:30 in the morning, not quite 5 o'clock, grandma. I get up at 5:30 and I actually pray and meditate. And I got to tell you, this week was hard for me. I'm not kidding. Like this human is telling you that, as the expert on, in psychotherapy on many different topics, this week was hard. It was hard to pray. It was hard to be grateful for anything. I felt very cynical this week. I felt very angry this week. I'm like, why? And so in the midst of all of that, I'm like, you know what? Yeah, this topic it really needs to be on gratitude, because here's the deal. A lot of us, we're facing a lot of struggles, obstacles, including grief and loss, accumulated grief. Right now I'm working with someone in the practice community, and actually it's a male. I don't work with a lot of males, but the few that come, like I always say, the few that brave it to come, they come, and this person in particular, he just lost his wife, and so I'm doing grief work professionally. And, so it's just people are having a lot of different things happen that's outside of their control. And so we're human. That's why I say I'm human this, I'm human this, I'm human everything, because that's true. I'm in my humanity every single day. And so this week, I really had to be intentional, and it was extremely difficult to have to do it again. And in life, there are times when this gratitude thing comes much easier than other days. But I have to tell you that it's been pretty raw for me this week. And I mentioned earlier that I love the fact that I get to do the work that I do because you know what? It actually lifts my spirit. That's one of the things about gratitude that we're going to get into later on. But I just wanted to clear up front because I want to always build a gap, connect the gap, right? So I'm trying to build a bridge to connect us to say, I'm talking about gratitude, not only from a professional, experience or experiences, but from a personal one that this week it was tough. And I really had to, by God's grace, that He helped me to be able to practice gratitude. So tonight, the outline tonight, we're going to talk about the history of gratitude, right? The history of it. Because, like, seriously, when you think about gratitude, what comes to mind for you? Now, persons listening to this podcast, you come from a range of different backgrounds. Like, your culture perhaps is similar or maybe different from mine. I don't know. I grew up in the Caribbean, and our primary, expression there is Christianity, although we have a different range of that's practiced back home. I mean, you have Anglicans, you have, what's the other, when I grew up, I saw persons that went to the Anglican church, the Seventh-day Adventists, but we all call ourselves Christians, so different ways of expressing that. But so, you may be able to relate to gratitude in a different way, right? I don't know. But, when you think about gratitude, I don't know what image comes to mind, right? As I mentioned earlier, I alluded earlier about my grandmother. When I think of gratitude, I think from a Christian point of view, religion then, right? Religion and spirituality. So when I think about gratitude, that's where my experience comes from in terms of being grateful or giving thanks, quote unquote. That's where my experience, and that's where my mind automatically goes, or images that come to my mind for gratitude, right? So I'm thinking about church already when I think about gratitude. If we're not careful, we exclude persons who don't think like that, but we don't want to do that. We want to include all persons here tonight because, I really want to normalize gratitude, right? So we're going to look at the history of gratitude, the purpose of gratitude, history, the purpose of it. So we don't just kind of make it like rote, or just cliche. We don't want to make that rote or cliche. Yeah, be grateful, be grateful, be grateful. It's almost like that saying, it is what it is. I don't like that. Like, it's really needed. So we're going to look at the history of gratitude. Bear with me. The purpose of gratitude, and, taking a look at gratitude in the midst of difficulties. Like, I was challenged this week. Now, is this the first time I felt challenged to be grateful? No, but I got to tell you, this week was the most difficult I have experienced in a very long time. Okay. It has been. And so, oh, microphone. I touched my microphone. Sorry, guys. So this week has been the most difficult. So we're going to take a look at, being intentional with gratitude in the midst of difficult times. And as I mentioned earlier, talking about grief and loss, like, oh my, so we're going to look at that. And then we're going to look at the benefits of doing it anyway, right? Even when you don't feel like it, right? So this is where you grow the most. And so that's what we're going to take a look at. It's now 6:25. We have lots of time to cover these areas of gratitude this evening. But I want to play this song by Monty G. Monty G says, and after we play Monty G, we're going to dive right into the history of gratitude. I like the song. It's very uplifting. And I know it kind of touches on, it just lifts the spirit while we're going to talk about tough things. How about that? So here we go.
Yo, this is Monty G, and you're listening to King of the Jungle Survival.
About our feelings, it's important to understand, our history and to understand the meaning of things. So even when we don't feel like it, we have something that we can draw upon. We can be reminded. We can have references, right? Reference point. So gratitude. So come to find out, gratitude has been around for a very long time. I mean, how many centuries? AD. So BC, right? There are many philosophers out there before our time, like Aristotle, like Cicero. I like Cicero, some of his stuff, not always. Even Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. My husband turned me on to that book. It's an audiobook if you ever want to look it up. But so philosophy and religion has been a part of creation from the very beginning of time. And so the concept of gratitude then has a long and complex history. Why? Because again, it's been part of religious and philosophical traditions in many cultures around the world, which is why earlier I said, hey, when you think of gratitude, I don't know what comes to mind for you because I don't know your background. I don't know your culture, but this concept really has a way of showing up differently and for some the same, but there's elements of sameness somewhere. And the bottom line, this element of sameness is being able to give thanks or to be thankful. And so, these philosophers such as Aristotle, he has his, what should I say, his sentiments on gratitude, and he says that it's necessary for human happiness, right? And I believe Aristotle, he's Greek, right? It's in ancient Greece. So his sentiment on gratitude is that it's a virtue, and that it's necessary for human happiness. I like how he coined human happiness, human before everything, because we are mortals, right? We're not immortal, at least not yet, right? And so we're still living in this body. And when we're living in this body, we're going to face a lot of pain and suffering. I hate to say it, but hey, it's the truth. If you live long enough, you know that we can't escape that, even though sometimes I wish we could. So it's rooted, traditions and religious traditions and philosophies have, deep roots where gratitude is concerned. How about this other philosopher, Cicero? I always have a hard time pronouncing his name. He also wrote about the importance of gratitude. And so so his sentiments is that it's the greatest of all virtues. Can you believe that? You know, he says it's the greatest of all virtues. And as a matter of fact, he thinks it's the hub or the parent of all other virtues. And so in many religious, traditions, whether it be Judaism or, whether it be Christianity, whether it's from the Muslims, Buddhism, it doesn't matter. There is an element of gratitude in each of these religions to say it's necessary to give thanks and to be grateful, regardless of the circumstances. And there's something that I stumble upon. It says that it's a form of thanksgiving or a form of gratitude. It's in Judaism, a prayer of thanksgiving. They call it the Birkat Hagomel, Birkat Hagomel. Now, I'm sure I did a bad job pronouncing that, but the Birkat Hagomel it's a prayer of thanksgiving, and it is said that it is recited after one has experienced a dangerous situation or survived an illness. Right? Wow. I didn't even know that. I was just doing some research on different cultures and how they express their gratitude, and this one caught my eye. And so, in Judaism, a prayer of thanksgiving is offered for Birkat Hagomel. So I don't know, in your culture or perhaps in your religious traditions, how do you give thanks? Do you practice it? Does it have meaning for you? Because let's be real. Like I work with persons that says, "Hey, you know what? I'm Jewish, but I don't practice that. I don't practice that. I don't practice a lot of things." And when that's the case, especially when it comes down to pain and suffering, if you don't practice a lot of traditions around, your faith or your expression of your faith, it can make the work much more difficult to move through. I've said this many times on this podcast, and I think I'll keep saying it because it's true. Your spiritual part of your life is one that needs to be developed so that when the pain and suffering comes, because it will, you need a vehicle to help to move that. And so gratitude then is that vehicle, right? In your spirituality, in your spiritual makeup, or your spiritual constitution. I like to use that word from time to time too, because that's what it is that helps us to move through. As I mentioned this week, I have to admit it did help me. I didn't want to. And here's the thing about that I have to declare is that although I have this tool, I have this spiritual expression, I didn't want to use it because in the face of the things that I was dealing with, I felt like, why is this happening in the first place? I don't know for you. Do you take that position? I do. I'm like, why in the world? Especially when you know in your humanity, you and I, we've done this or we've done that to prevent certain things from happening. But as if we have lived long enough, we recognize that that's exactly what pain and suffering is. It's things that happen outside of the things that you cannot control. Let's continue talking about, gratitude. So we didn't mention Christianity. So Christianity then, in gratitude is often seen as a way to give thanks to God for blessings received, right? But there's a reverse on that. And so that's one way of expressing, thanks to God. But also, I mentioned Job, the book of Job last week. He also gave thanks, right? Even though his kids died suddenly. And I mean, he was experiencing excruciating pain, physical pain. Whenever I reflect on Job, Job is a book in the Bible that I lean on a lot recently, because it really, Job, the book of Job, he expresses a range of emotion that's just like, I can't find the word right now. And I'm not a person that's a loss for words, but I mean, unspeakable, pain. But he said that, though you slay me, yet will I trust you. That's hard. That's hard. And so he was given thanks in that way. And I believe in another part of Job, he said, can we accept good from the hand of God and not bad? And that's a hard position too. But his pain and suffering, he found meaning in his pain and suffering, and he did that through his gratitude. That's what I'm recognizing, from a Christian perspective. That gratitude is not only seen as a way to give thanks to God for the blessings, but also, giving thanks in the midst of, right, the pain and the suffering. So when exactly did the concept of gratitude become more secularized? Actually, so secular meaning contemporary of the present time, right? So it moved away from just being religious or, being more philosophical or, religious, moved away from those institutions, but more secularized, moved to, other people in society that are not necessarily religious or necessarily, have affinity for any kind of philosophical way of thinking. So it's just general then, secularized, general, in general. So this concept of gratitude then became open, if you will, in the 19th century. And then so now not only philosophers or religious people that's their, forte, so to speak, but now psychologists and social scientists like myself, right? But I consider myself a Christian first. So, but social scientists and psychologists such as so William James, he is a philosopher and a psychologist, right? And other philosophers and psychologists like William James, they began to notice the importance of cultivating a habit of gratitude in their lives, and so they began doing research on gratitude and on the benefits of gratitude, and it has shown that expressing gratitude can have a positive impact on mental health and your well-being. Well, look at that. So now it started with religion and philosophy, right? We looked at some of the philosophers such as Aristotle, Cicero, Marcus Aurelius, and many others, right? Even Gandhi, right? Mother Teresa, these icons in our time, in our time, or in times past rather. So now we've moved away from, religious and philosophical institutions or way of thinking now down to psychologists and, social scientists, and they got kind of curious, right? They didn't get judgy. They became very curious. I imagine that they become curious about their own lives too. I mean, because before they can even begin to talk to their patients about anything like that, I imagine that, they in their own humanity, they have their own sufferings and their own pain. I'm pretty sure that they became curious about, perhaps how gratitude can work for them, right? I mean, they're not immortals, they're mortals. So, the history of gratitude, there's a long history of gratitude. And oftentimes in our time now, in the here and now, the 21st century, wherein these ancient concepts have become so secularized that it's beginning to, in some sense, lose its, I don't know, its fervor, lose its sacredness, if you will. And in a time where, we have like just a tremendous amount of loss and grief and just difficulties, um, I don't know that people realize the value of gratitude. And I'm going to put myself in there too. I think we're so focused on, I know we've become very materially focused in the 21st century, very, very materially focused. I mean, I find that people are more, concerned about themselves. There's no real sense of community. You can see this in the interactions. Just go through the McDonald's line. If you cut somebody, people just cut you off. You can't even ask for someone to, let you cut into the line somewhere, or if you're trying to cross over traffic. If you put your indicator on, people speed up. You can't even get into a proper space. I mean, people slam the door in your face. I mean, in other words, people are very self-centered. No one really thinks about the next person. Very individualistic, if you will. I got to get mine, so you just go and get yours. And we're all about consumption, and we're not thinking about our neighbors. We're not thinking about each other. And so when we become like the very focused on self, very egocentric, then that's the word. When things happen to us, how can we be thankful? Because we really haven't really built relationships. We haven't stayed connected. We really don't put the proper emphasis on things that are really important, not so much the extrinsic things, but the intrinsic things in life, which is why, this long history on gratitude is so important, because the philosophers and the religious persons from before, if you think about philosophical thinking, like, Stoicism, so philosophy is about contemplating, the way how to live one's life. And Stoicism is a philosophical concept that looks at, not being reactive to things in life, not concerned about consumerism, but looking at the deeper things in life, right? That's another philosophy of thought. And so these philosophies really, as Cicero says, that gratitude is the parent of all philosophies. He's onto something there. So think about, fast forward today, how we have lost, we've lost really focus on the deeper things of life. We've become very consumer, become large consumers of just material things and not looking at the things that are more meaningful. And so along the way, gratitude then just gets lost in everything then. No wonder why the research says that it's become so secularized, because everything is just either material, external, nothing that's sacred inside, nothing that's contemplative. And so here we are in the 21st century. And in the 21st century, we have more mental health illness than ever before. I mean, you have now the research is showing that you have teen girls who are experiencing, higher suicide rates than ever before. You have teenagers who are vaping more than ever before, smoking. Depression is high among teens, girls and boys, right? And so in this society where everything is fast paced, everything is right now, everything is, everything has to be perfect all at once. I have to have this or I have to have that. There is no space for gratitude. There's no more delayed gratification about anything. There's nothing delayed. And so in the midst of this consumeristic kind of society, we're forgetting that pain and suffering also exists, right? So we have to take a look at, where we're headed here. Where are we headed? What is happening? What are some things that have changed? Well, a lot of things have changed, right? A lot of things have changed. But one of the things that really continues, right, is that pain and suffering is a reality. So when we're not making room to build relationships, to continue with our connections, remember, pain and suffering doesn't go away. It's just that when pain and suffering comes, it just makes the other parts of our lives worse, because we weren't building relationships. We weren't focused on things that are really important. And gratitude is a natural derivative when you make time for relationships, when you make time to connect, when you make time to connect on the inside and not just the external things, because obviously, right, hardships will come. they will. But when they do come, where will you find yourself? So, these philosophers, they're really onto something in terms of giving thanks. What are you giving thanks for? what what is there that you take the time to slow down to be thankful for? What is that? What is that? Who is that person? And so, this history of gratitude, I think it really bears repeating over and over again. So it'll be a point of reference to go back to in the midst of, whatever it is that you're struggling with. Or if you find yourself in a season where things are going well, it is still a healthy habit to practice is gratitude, right? Let's take a pause here. So I think I've talked a lot about the history of gratitude and take a look at the influencers of gratitude. Um, and I can go on and on about the history of that, but I think you have a pretty good idea, you know, um, in terms of where it comes from and how long this concept has been around us and the different religious institutions or philosophers that have really expanded and helped this concept to evolve. And in the 21st century, I might as well just close on this section of the podcast that so today, how is gratitude practiced then, or how should it be practiced? We're going to talk about that towards the end, but I want to kind of put this in here. So today, a lot of people, because it's become so secularized, right? And this is the part that kind of makes me nervous, though, is that today, gratitude is often associated not with so much philosophical or religious institutions, but it's more associated with like mindfulness practices, and that's okay too. I mean, I teach on that, because that's a way of promoting mental health. And let's just face it, a lot of us in 21st century, because this concept has become so secularized. A lot of people don't go to institutions, don't go to church. In fact, religion has such a taboo on its name, unfortunately, based on much of history and prehistory. A lot of persons don't really have an affinity for philosophy. I mean, who picked up? I know my teens don't pick up a book on philosophy. Well, maybe Kyra does. But our 21st century teen, they're not going to pick up a book on philosophy. Many adults are not going to pick up a book on philosophy. Let's just be honest there. So more or less, it's a good thing then that psychologists and social scientists really have gotten involved in the business of gratitude, because they have helped to provide a lot of research then on this concept, and it's the importance of it promoting well-being and mental health, right? And so practicing mindfulness has now become a big part of our culture, in terms of really, what should I say, making sure that this concept, makes its way in instead of out. And so I guess I'm taking a position where it's secularized, and to some degree it gets lost because of it being secularized. It becomes this thing where I guess you can do it, I guess you shouldn't. No, really, it's not a suggestion. I'm making a statement, a bold statement. Why am I doing that? Because, again, as I mentioned earlier, we're looking at suicide rates, depression rates among teens. We have the culture and time that we're living in now. It's just everything goes. We have a cancel culture. Adults, parenting is hard. Adults are having, financial difficulties, difficulty raising kids. I mean, it's just a barrage of things that really, really, really attacks your mental health. And so while persons perhaps may not go to church or pick up a book, so mindfulness now, thankfully to these researchers, have made its way into our society, which again, I'm glad. I'm taking a position here. While I'm not liking the fact that it's so secularized because it can get lost, where persons can think, well, maybe it's good, maybe it's not. No, the research is clear that practicing mindfulness, which has now become a part of, this concept of gratitude, that's like the quote unquote, that's a new spin on it. It really does help to bring about, a promoted well-being of, mental health and, your psychological space. And so many people now practice gratitude, and they do it in different forms. And I'll mention that now, and we'll do that again at the end. But cultivating a mindfulness attitude and around the concept of gratitude is really important. Journaling is one way that now that mindfulness around the concept of gratitude is now introduced into our times today. and being able to express, gratitude on a regular basis. And we're going to take a little bit more look at that in terms of why it's important. But I figured I'd close off this segment, looking at the history of it and how it's now related now in our 21st century, and different ways that practicing this gratitude concept in different ways can continue to be helpful for us, right? What do you think about that? Did you know about Cicero and gratitude? Did you know about Aristotle and gratitude? Did you know a lot about that? Well, if you did not, then you heard it here tonight. So let's take a break. And what are we going to play next? When we come back, I want to play Feelings by Chandler Moore. And he talked about, how he experienced, he didn't quite call it depression, but when he was facing his own pain and suffering, and how he got through it. And I just want you to hear that. But for right now, we're going to play some more uplifting music. And let me see, what are we going to play? Let's see here. You know what? Let's play the anthem tonight. Let's play Fear Is Not My Future. How about that? Shout out to the persons on the podcast. This person goes by the name of Cash. There's Lizzie. I don't know. I don't see a lot of names, but welcome to Healing of the Heart podcast. Thanks for joining us tonight. I really appreciate you. Who else? Did I miss anybody? And there's some other screen names. I can't really pronounce them. I'm sorry, but thank you for joining. So let's continue. So yeah, the history of gratitude. You know what? In my practice, we do a lot of work around gratitude, especially working with persons that, again, my work is trauma-based work. I'm a trauma therapist. And so, at some point in the work, we do weave in gratitude. It's necessary. We call that the front loading piece. If we don't front load and resource, then where's the hope? Where's the resilience, right? And that's what gratitude does. It builds your hope. It builds resilience, because the brain has a way of telling you that there is no hope, and that's not true. And so it's important to, seriously take a look at gratitude and why. And so we're going to talk about that right now. Look at the purposes of gratitude. But before the purposes, really, I'm going to talk about some stories of gratitude. And then that leads us right into, hopefully, as I said, I'm not making a suggestion. I'm making a strong statement because the research is clear. And I practice this every day that it works. Even my own hardship this week, I practice that. And here's the thing about feelings. I got to say this. Feelings come and they actually want to pass. They really do. I teach this a lot in my work. I usually parallel feelings with clouds. Don't clouds come? And before you know it, they're gone. Feelings really have a purpose. They're here to teach us something. And so if we can listen and if we can apply gratitude, right, these feelings will go. They will come and they will pass. But let's listen to Chandler Moore talk about his feelings. I think it's so powerful. Listen to what he says about feelings, and let me know what you think. So here we go. Feelings. Goodness, Chandler Moore from Maverick City. He recorded that, and if you had joined me at the beginning of the podcast, I was sharing how this week was so rough for me, and I made my disclosure. I am a human mother, wife. I am a human therapist. I walk in my humanity. And I love how this artist, he walked in his humanity. I mean, he's well known, he writes a lot of songs. Everybody knows him, but yet he was so vulnerable to share his feelings, and he expressing gratitude in his feelings. He's thankful that he was able to suffer in a way that he felt close to his God, and how he was able to pray and not suffer without him, but suffer and go through his suffering with him. And as a result, he has grown. He is able to, pray more, or feel closer, feel stronger, more confident. And I have to tell you, and one of the things that he said was, before doing that, he used to push against that. I don't want to suffer. He said it, if you listen carefully, but he said, I've learned to suffer with, not outside of God. And I was like, wow, right? And so I don't know your spiritual background or your expression, but I encourage you to cultivate that because, again, you will suffer. You will suffer. I will suffer. And this week, I was pushing back against my suffering and my pain. In fact, I can be candid. I'm like, God, why? Why? Why do you allow this? This is something I worked hard, for this not to happen or go this way. Why is that happening? And I became very cynical this week. I was angry. And I recognized, whoa, I didn't judge myself. I practice what I teach. And because I'm in my humanity, I recognized what was happening. I had to check judgment at the door. And I had to, sit with that. And when you're able to sit with that, then you're able to let the emotions come and they pass. And that's when the gratitude can spring, as you heard from Chandler Moore. I don't know what you guys think about that. Send me a message, say something. So let's take a look at practicing gratitude in the midst of difficulty. You heard his testimony, his expression. I mean, he's a known artist, and he went through. He said he didn't do anything wrong, nothing. It wasn't broken relationships. He just found himself in a place where he was just feeling disconnected. And there are times when we feel disconnected. Everything could be going great, and you still feel a sense of disconnect. Or obviously, when things are not going so great, then, definitely you feel it. You tend to feel that more. I mean, difficult circumstances can come. I mean, what are those? It could be a loss of relationship or relationships. It could be where you feel a sense of, I can't get close to people because every time I allow myself to get close to people, people leave, right? It could be where you're changing, unhealthy habits to healthy habits. And as a result, is causing isolation in your life. I see this all the time in my work. And then we have to cultivate, better ways of being and learn how to vet and how to create healthier relationships. So, disruptions in our relationships can cause us to have difficulty. And in those moments, it's hard to give gratitude. It's hard to give thanks. I mean, I'm going to give thanks. It's hard to do that when you're losing relationships, or as I've been like belaboring the point, it's hard to be grateful in the midst of, grief and loss. Like, what's there to be thankful for? Seriously. It's hard. These are hard human topics to talk about, but we can talk about them. We can work through them. Maybe financial circumstances. And this is a part where I struggle with in my work sometimes, because I work with women who have gone through domestic violence circumstances. Their finances are not where it needs to be so they can move through, and thank goodness I wasn't just a overnight therapist. I've done community social work, so I know how to work with women to help to lead them to resources and points of safety to help them to rebound in their lives. But this is always a very difficult topic because when it's in front of me, because how do you help someone to move from an unsafe place to a safe place, and finances are involved, and so I mean, how do you give thanks in that? These are some real things, right? And lately I've come across that in the last year or so. I've worked with a few women that have gone through that. So, I mean, practicing gratitude when things are difficult or stressful situations, it's not easy. And what is there to give thanks for? What, right? So let's talk about how you can practice gratitude when things are difficult. So you might want to get a pen and paper out for this because this is really serious. And if you were sitting on my couch, I would have you do the same thing. Like anyone who works with me, I do this because I always say to the women and girls and the few men that I work with, hey, the change you seek does not take place within this treatment schedule. It doesn't. This is just like the preparation. But the change you really seek takes place outside of this office, outside this podcast. It's true. So now this extends or applies to you. So you might want to write this down because you know what? If it's not marked, if it's not, called out, then it's not going to be dealt with, right? So you might want to get a pen or paper on this one. So here's some tips for practicing gratitude when it's hard to do so. And I always say to myself when I'm sitting in my chair in my office, guess what? This goes for me first. And I mean it. Because remember, I'm human first, right? Yes. So focus on small things. even when things feel overwhelming. And let me tell you, this week it has been. There are often small things that we can be grateful for. I think I mentioned that this morning. This morning when I got up, I'm like, man, it's beautiful outside. At my daughter's soccer game, I can feel the wind on my face. And I smiled. I was like, look at that. I even forgot my sweater. It was a little chilly this morning. And my daughter said, Mom, you can have mine. I'm like, no, 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 no. It's okay. I really thought I had my jacket in the truck. I didn't. But anyway, it was just nice to feel that breeze, that nice spring breeze in Florida. Right. So try to focus on the little things, that bring you some joy or comfort. I love my coffee, maybe a warm cup of tea or a phone call with a friend, those simple things. Again, not consumeristic kind of deal, like going shopping, and those things are external and those are very, very temporary. It's hard to kind of internalize buying an outfit versus having a warm cup of tea or just looking at nature and taking that in. Practice self compassion. I have a podcast on self compassion. You probably should listen to that. When we're going through a tough time, it can be easy to beat ourselves up. As I said, I'm working with someone with grief right now. And one of the things I come across with grief is people often feel guilty, like they didn't do enough for their loved ones. And when you peel the layers back, it's just not true. When grief hits, it's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of trauma to the brain. You can't think straight. You did the best you could. So, even with ourselves, we feel like, oh, we should have done this. That is not the time. It's not the time then to beat up on yourself for not feeling like you could do something better or greater. No, how about you remind yourself that, you know what? Offer yourself self-compassion. I did the best that I could in that moment. Remind yourself that, and as Chandler Moore said, it's okay to feel the way you're feeling. He said it's okay to have feelings. I love that. Like, I so love, and he's a guy talking like that. Talk about gender expression. Talk about how men can't say how they're feeling. Lies. Lies. All lies. All lies. And the few men I've worked with, I've seen men cry. It's the most powerful thing I've seen in my life and in my career, to see grown men cry. It's a beautiful thing. You know what I mean? So Chandler Moore says, it's okay to feel the way you do. And he said, it's okay to suffer with God. I don't have to suffer without him. That one hit me, right? Keep a gratitude journal. That I'm deliberate about. And I have to be honest, there's some nights I'm so tired, I don't do it. But for the most part, and it's not about perfection. You've often heard me say on this podcast that, growth is not linear. It's just progress, little by little over time. I mean, there's no prize here, but there's your peace. How about that? There's no prize, but your peace. I should write that down. Write down things you're grateful for each day. It's important. You know what? I was teaching this week too. We're co-creating our lives. I was telling my daughter this too. You're co-creating. You have a free will. What you focus on, you will create that. That's not a lie. That is science. Some people say, oh, that's not spiritual. Well, you know what? Believe it or not, spiritual work is science too. I mean, come on, where does science come from? You think we created science? No, it's been before us. All right. So we're co-creating our lives. It's so serious, right? So remember to write down the things that you're thankful for, because you'll be more focused on those things. So do a gratitude journal, right? Focus on the positive. Even if, matter of fact, let me change that. Especially when you're going through a hard time. I have my affirmation alarm. I think I've mentioned it here. Everyone in my practice community, all the women and all the girls and the men, and if you're listening to the podcast and now you guys are smiling because you know what I'm about to say, they all have an alarm affirmation like I do. My affirmation alarm goes off at 12:50, 10 o'clock in the morning, that says, I accept the best, and with God's help, I will have the best. Every morning at 10 o'clock. At 12:50, my other alarm goes off about my personal affirmations about my life, right? That I am strong. Families don't understand us. They don't get us. All right. But maybe it's an old school friend or old teacher. I don't know. Or someone like me, a mental health professional for support and guidance. And here's the thing about that. Remember, practicing gratitude is a skill that takes time and effort. Let's just face it. Some of us didn't grow up having grandmothers like me that taught me how to pray and how to give thanks. Some of us didn't grow up like that. We don't have that point of reference. We don't have that, what I call this object, right? We don't have that. And it's okay to struggle with it at times. There's always an opportunity to learn and grow. You heard what Chandler Moore said. It's okay. It really is okay. It is okay, right? It's okay. So we're going to pause for another 2 minutes. And when I come back, we're going to talk about the benefits of doing all those things I just suggested, right? And stated. So let's do another funky song. We're gonna play Shine Again. I like this one. Um, it's another Caribbean funky song. I like it a lot. And like I said, when we come back, we're gonna look at the benefits of doing these gratitude practices. Let's play Shine Again. Obviously, it increases happiness, right? And that's important to increase happiness. I mean, when your immune system is depressed, you get sick. All right. So think about gratitude as a way of boosting your immune system, like literally. It boosts positive emotions and increases feelings of happiness and well-being. I don't like the word happiness so much as I prefer contentment, because happiness is fleeting. I mean, anyone can feel I feel happy, but no, more a sense of feeling settled, feeling stable, feeling grounded. That's the word. That's a therapist word. Feeling grounded, is an important benefit of practicing gratitude. How about getting better sleep? It helps you improve. So, for example, meditation is a mindfulness practice. When you're doing when you're doing your journal at night, gratitude. I'm even stating here that while you're doing your gratitude journal at night, do some meditation after that. After you finish writing, you're emptying out the brain what you're thankful for. Add some meditation to that. Do some breath work. All right. It improves your quality of sleep and your duration of sleep, helps you to sleep longer. Now, nothing happens overnight, guys. So this takes practice. And remember, I said earlier, be patient with yourself. But the more you do this nightly, you're going to see an increase in the quality of your sleep and the duration of your sleep. And of course, it improves your relationship. You're not a whiner, or you're not negative all the time. And let's just face it, nobody wants to be around someone negative, which is why it's important to be, to have gratitude, to be able to talk about how you feel, but also over time, you have more expressions for gratitude. And that will, strengthen your relationships by, fostering positive feelings and increasing feelings of social support, right? And let's face it, gratitude reduces stress. Oh my goodness, I just talked about that the first part. It really improves your immune system. And so when you have a lot of cortisol, anxiety from being depressed and not being able to be grateful or thankful, it really does really cause you to have all these other ailments going on. So gratitude has a way of reducing your stress by promoting feelings of calm and relaxation, which is why I stated earlier, at night when you're doing a gratitude journal, add some meditation to that. There are lots of videos on YouTube that teaches about meditation and breath work, right? And of course, here's another big one. It improves physical health. Gratitude is linked to a range of physical health benefits, including lowering your blood pressure. My mom, she teases me now. I'm practicing mindfulness. My mom is 67, okay? And I've been trying to tell her this for a long time. So in the last month or two, I'm practicing mindfulness. She's probably listening to me tonight laughing. And again, like I said, it improves immune function and reduces inflammation. Gratitude also helps to build resilience. I alluded to that earlier, and it promotes the ability to bounce back from adversity. I touched on this in the last podcast talking about grief and loss, but gratitude is one of the most important mindfulness practices that you can do, especially if you're going through grief and loss. I cannot stress that enough. I cannot. You need some support on grief and loss? Listen to the last podcast. It's pretty important. It's pretty in depth. And again, gratitude also increases empathy and compassion for others. When we have compassion for others, I mentioned this way at the beginning, how we need to build relationships. Because you know what? Strong communities, strong families, really thrive on, healthy interdependence on each other. So it's not about consumerism. It's not about buying this thing or that thing, but it's being able to build these healthy relationships. So when the hardships come, we can actually reach out for others and they can reach out to us, and we can have this real deep sense of gratitude for ourselves and for each other. So overall, practicing gratitude can have a powerful impact on your well-being, on my well-being. It improves our relationship, our physical health, and our emotional resilience. And let's just face it, we need that more and more and more today. Would you agree with that? I think you would. Oh my gosh, let me give you guys a round of applause tonight for just working with me through gratitude and really making a big deal about it. big deal about gratitude. And I really hope I connected with you tonight. In my work, I always end by saying, what was most important for you today? Or what did you connect with? What are you leaving with? So I'll leave those questions with you too. Did I connect with you? What was important for you in gratitude in our discussion, our talk tonight? What are you leaving with? I don't know, any or all of those questions. Maybe you should journal that tonight. I think it'll be important. Maybe send me a message and let me know what was important for you tonight with this topic. And we're going to close out our evening with I'll Shine Again. We're going to play that. And I thank you so much. And here's a good time to tell you this. We'll come back again in 2 weeks, and I'm going to have two amazing guests from my practice community on the podcast. And we're still working out the title of it. They're probably listening tonight. We're working out what to call it, but it's two amazing, amazing women from the New Beginning Healing Institute. I've worked with them in the past, and they've listened to this podcast, and they said, "No, I want to come on the podcast. I want to talk." They want to talk about their growth and how they have worked through their own mental health disruptions, and they just want to share. And I'm so grateful for that. They offered, and I'm like, you know what? Why not? I'm pretty certain that you can really help a lot more people than I can with your own stories. So yeah, so be listening for that, and I'll be posting more about these two women coming up next week, actually. And again, thank you for joining me this evening and for supporting Healing of the Heart. And let me see, anything else? Oh, yeah. So we have our Women's Connection Collective coming up on the 18th. Go to Eventbrite. It's a pretty much a free group, unlike our self-esteem empowerment group. This group is a donation group, and so a lot of times what happens that we have found is that when women are getting healthier and better, they need to have healthier relationships, and they want to continue on. So we have formed this group to help women to continue to form, healthier relationships and bonds. And so this group is a continuation from our women's empowerment group. And so it's going to be the 18th on Benny's on the Beach coming up next week, Saturday. We're pretty excited about that. I mean, it's, oh my gosh, it's really cool, guys. So go on to Eventbrite page and you can register for that group, for that one. So once again, thank you for listening this evening. We're going to rock out to Shine Again, and I'll see you next time.